It's refreshing to see people on a video call with no bookcases behind them.
Yeah. If I turn my laptop slightly, you'll see quite a few.
Sorry guys, are we really live or we're waiting?
We are live.
We're live. We're just waiting for a few more people to join the stream, and then we'll get the show on.
Thank you.
We have a hi on the comments. Hi, project.
Hello.
All right. I think we'll make a start. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the 48th Agile Roundabout, and this is our 4th virtual Agile meetup. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today, wherever you may be watching this. So before I get into introing our panelists, I just wanted to plug our next meetup that's taking place on the 15th of October. That will be focusing on robotics. So if you can make that, you can find more information on the JVM Roundabout meetup page. So today we're lucky enough to have 3 amazing speakers joining us. So firstly, we'll be hearing from Amaia, who's an Agile coach and delivery manager at Babylon Health. Then we have Chris, who's an engineering lead at Centrica. And then finally, we have Manuel, who's a digital transformation lead at Bruhati Solutions. So at TRG, the day job is definitely recruitment. However, we've set up these talks as a way to give back to the community. And we hope that you guys and the audience find a real value in what these guys will be saying this evening. So as you can probably tell, we're trying a new platform tonight via YouTube. All 3 speakers would love your participation and interaction. So please do ask any questions in the comment section below. I think you just need to log into YouTube via Google. And finally, any social media, please use the hashtag Agile Roundabout. So right, enough from me. I'm sure you've fed up of hearing my voice. So first we've got Amaia, who will be delving into the topic of Agile mindsets. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you very much, John, for the introduction. Let me see if they can put my slides up. And there you are. So today I'm going to be talking to you about the Agile mindset, and especially about my journey of awakening to an Agile mindset. I will start telling you a little bit of myself, who I am, then what Agile mindset means for me, my journey of discovery, and then some tips that help you and hopefully can help you too. So let me start. So this is me in holidays in Estepona. This is my contact details. These are my contact details. So you can reach me in LinkedIn or by email in my Babylon Health account. I started my career. I studied computer science, and I started my career as a software developer. And then I went up through the ranks to team lead, to development manager, and then working for one of my companies, my previous companies, they introduced us to Agile, to Scrum, actually. And they sent us in a course, or to a course, Scrum Master and Product Owner. And I said, oh, go, do Agile. Now you are the masters of the universe, so let's go. So you can imagine how that was. I will tell you more about my journey after that later on. Now I want to kind of dive into what the Agile mindset is for me, because I only have 20 minutes. I can speak 4 years on this one. So I have to keep on moving. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of divide the 2 words that forms the Agile mindset. So we have Agile first. So what is Agile? If I had more time, I will set up a pool here and I will ask you what Agile is. And this is very funny because I always like asking people what Agile is to see their opinions. And I remember in one interview, they asked me this, and I was saying, well, Agile is kind of a way of being, is kind of doing things in a different way. And this person said to me, no, Agile is a set of processes. And at that point, we knew that we were not right for each other. So we moved on. Then I had the massive opportunity to actually train with Jeff Sunderland, or I should say, Dr. Jeff Sunderland. And this wasn't one of the questions that we put forward for him. And this is, I don't know if you know him, but when he speaks, it's kind of a bit good. And he will say, what is Agile? Agile is just a set of values and principles that form the Agile Manifesto. And we were all like, oh, wow, yes, you're right. That is what Agile is, really. So after that, we moved to what mindset is. So what is mindset? So English is not my first language. So actually, I have to find it in the dictionary. And I came up with these three solutions for what it is. And the first one, it was very funny, but I don't like it very much, but actually describes a lot of what we can see in our industry right now. And it's a set of attitudes or fixed ideas that somebody has and that are often difficult to change. And as we know, sometimes we get very fixated on how we do things and things like that, and we don't change our minds. The other one, which I like a little bit more, is the established set of attitudes held by someone. And then we can move to, which is the definition that I like the most, is if you refer to someone's mindset, you mean the general attitudes and the way they typically think about things. And I like this one a lot. So if you see here, there is kind of a theme going through, and it's attitudes. It's all about attitudes. And attitudes is all about behaviors. So if we put all this together, what we have is that actually the mindset is nothing more than the behaviors and the attitudes that derive from the application of the values and principles as described in the Agile Manifesto. And this is as simple as that. This is what, for me, Agile Mindset is. Most of you have seen this, which is the Agile Onion. And it has at the heart of it the processes, the tools, and practices. But I think those are kind of not irrelevant, but kind of not in the mix, because they should, or we should, be inspecting and adapting and changing all these practices and processes. It's the values and the principles and the behaviors that we have, the ones that matter. So I'm sure you have all seen this slide from Gandhi before. And I'm sure some of you might be saying, but he didn't say that. He probably didn't say that, but somebody else kind of summarized it for him. What he actually said was something like this. If we could change ourselves, the tendency in the world will also change. So as a man, he didn't put woman, I add the woman part. As a man, woman changes her own nature, so does the attitude of the world change towards her. So in other words, what he's saying is that if we change our behaviors, we will affect our environment as well. We will change our environment. So change kind of starts with us, and the behavioral change will start with us. And this is a fabulous sentence from one of my coaches and friend, Audrey Tarasahota, from CIF 340. And it says, a new way of being enables a new way of working, which means we have all these new ways of working. If we don't change the way we are not going to be able to adopt them. So we need to have in mind that in order to adopt this, we need to change the way we think, we need to change the way we be. And these behaviors kind of derive into, I don't know if you have seen this before, this is the engagement cycle. This is the minimum set of behaviors that you need to have in order to have an agile mindset. And this is called a cycle because if one of them is missing, the whole cycle collapses. They are not there anymore. So you need to have safety. You need to have an equal voice. You need to be able to ask questions, to be yourself, to say things without fear of retribution. You need to be able to feel vulnerable. Sometimes this is a very kind of funny fact. when we see somebody that is vulnerable, we think, oh, they are very brave. But when we try to be vulnerable, we see it as a failure kind of thing. So we need to change our kind of thinking on this one. Authentic connections, you need to feel that you belong to the team, to the company, to whatever group you are working with. And definitely you need to have trust, because without trust, you are actually have nothing. And if any of these elements disappears, then you are actually lost. You don't have that agile mindset, and you will never get that agile mindset. So these are your basics, your fundamentals. But something that you need to watch out is the other side, which is the cycle of disengagement. And this is when you see these behaviors happening in your organization, in your teams, or sometimes even in yourself, you need to watch out for and kind of stop them. So if you see fear, somebody that they don't want to speak because they fear retribution. When you see the behavior of keep calm and cover your ass. So, you know, I'm here, I sent an email, I copy the whole enterprise on it, so I'm covered, I'm fine, I don't have to do anything else. When you feel that you don't belong, when you feel that you are alone, and when you trust no one, and when you think that somebody is out to get you, and when you know to put the knife in your back. So these are the behaviors that you need to watch out for and correct them. And as usual, change starts with us. So as leaders, we need to actually make sure that our teams see us doing the right thing, because one thing is saying it, one thing is doing it. So watch out for that. I have to give the credit to Michael Sahota and Audrey Tara Sahota and Sif 314 for this slide. So every time that you see that little thing on the top that says shift, is because of them and because I have nicked the slide from them. And now I'm going to go into my journey and how I discovered this mindset, which I thought I actually had, but I discovered I didn't. So this was me. I was standing with my teams. I had, from the time that I was introduced to the Scrum, to that course that we did 2 days, that's it, to here, I have done a lot of discovery. I went to a lot of meetups. I knew a lot of people. I knew a lot of stuff. So I thought I knew everything. And I thought I was the master of the universe. But I was starting to have some issues in some teams. Definitely in those teams in which there were very, very young people with not much experience, and which they were questioning absolutely everything because they were not taking anything at face value. And why should they? So all I wanted to do is have a team that behaved like this. And I didn't. So I thought, okay, maybe this is my leadership skills that they are not very good, and I need to do something about it. So what I did is I found out something in the market, which was the CAL program from the Scrum Alliance. And it said, through CAL program, you can increase your leadership effectiveness and learn how to be a better leader, no matter what your role. So I thought, woof, this is what I need. I have to go to this course. And I saw Michael Sahota in one of the meetups that he did. And he had a very, very tough kind of questions from the audience. And he managed that extremely well. And I thought, wow, this is what I need. This is really what I need. So I went to his course. But little did I know that I was going for a ride. And we were in the course. And what happened to me was like, you know, when some of us call themselves Agile Evangelists or an Agile, you know, whatever. That link of evangelists with Agile always kind of used to create a reaction on me. And it's because I link the evangelist part with religion and with kind of the people that comes at your doors, knocks at your doors and wants to transform you to their, or convince you to join their religions. So I thought that was wrong. But when I was doing this course with Michael, I suddenly realized, actually, I was one of them. So everything that I disliked, I was doing it myself. So it was really, really an awakening, and really, really depressing to find out that actually what I was doing is I was trying to push Agile through the throats of my team members. So what did I do? The first thing that I did is let go of what I wanted. And that allowed me to listen to myself, how I was coming across to them, to listen to them, and to listen to the whole organization. Let me have a bit of water. And most importantly, to be compassionate and empathetic, to actually put myself on their shoes, in their shoes, and not thinking that, I was the master of the universe and they didn't know anything. So remember the image of the team that I wanted? I didn't get that, but I got this. And with this, the result was quite fast, quite instant. And even though we still have our differences, we always listened and tried to accommodate everybody's views. So we end up with kind of this colorful idea or ideas. So now what? So what you can do when you are in this situation or when you want to do something like this, I don't know if, going into this course is going to help you at all. Excuse me. But that is what helped me. What you have to do is just look at yourself and actually stand in the truth and find what that truth is. What do you need to get better? And if that is going into the CAL course, so be it. But, it's up to you. Just find what it was for you. And then make sure you let go of what you want. Don't try to push your agenda on anybody. Just listen. As I did, listen to yourself first, how you come across to people. Listen to the rest and be empathetic and compassionate when you listen to people. And then listen to the system. And I will give you a little thing at the end, well, in a minute, that you can try in your organization to actually find out what your organization is on this kind of basic agile mindset. And which is this check bust. And it's just this. And you can put the cycle of disengagement in one side, the cycle of engagement in the other, and then you ask the teams or you ask your people where they stand in this. One being, trust no one, for example, 10 being we have lots of trust, we trust everybody with our lives, kind of thing. And when I first joined Babylon, I wanted to gather some data, and it was very easy to find out what they were in terms of the processes and tools, because that is quite straightforward. You're there in a week, which meetings we have, which meetings we haven't, how do we do them, how well are they facilitated, etc., etc. But in terms of what people think and how people behave, it takes a very long time to actually see. So what I did is I did this with them, with the part of the organization that I was working on. And to my surprise, because things and experiments are never straightforward, to my surprise, I find out that somebody asked me, they kept asking me, how are we going to do this? At which level do you want us to do it? So I asked, what do you mean at which level? Yeah, do you want it at company level or do you want it at team level? And I said, I don't know. Are they different? Of course they are different. Okay, so why don't you put company with a C and the team with a T, and then we can compare them. Okay, yeah, that's fine. So we have to send the instructions again to everybody, so they can put they could put the C with the company and the T with the team. And then when we did the analysis, it was clear that actually the teams had a very, very good kind of agile mindset, but we thought that the company didn't. So we kind of had this kind of bubbles of agile, and it wasn't extending to the whole company. So obviously, straight away, with just, a couple of days work. You had a lot of information in there and things that you have to do going forward. One was to protect those teams, to keep those agile bubbles going, and second, to extend it to actually include the whole company. So that is what we're working on right now. So I just want to finish my my talk with saying that this is actually the sentence that it kind of encompasses everything else. It's a new way of being, enables a new way of working. So if we want to do new things, we have to change the way that we act. And I will finish like this. Any questions?
Thank you very much for that. Really insightful. We've got a few questions. So the first one from Pradeep. He asked, did the CAL course help you get more out of your teams in terms of engagement and output?
Definitely. Totally, Pradeep, because I wasn't pushing anymore. I was listening and I was taking their views in consideration. And actually, it was kind of more collaboration between all of us, not just me saying, oh, no, this has to be like this because Scrum says that, because Kanban says that, because, all these things. So definitely, it really, really helped me.
Okay. Raf asks, how do you implement an agile way of working without forcing it onto your team?
That's a very good question, Raf. Very, very difficult because you get very frustrated, I have to say as well. But you just show those values and you just ask and suggest. And it's up to them to join you. So you invite people to join you. And I had something kind of somebody asked me as well. They were getting very frustrated because people were not coming to them. And it's like, I just want to tell them to do it. They don't. Because, when you push it onto people, they will do it just because of the sake of it. But if they actually join you, they will take ownership of it. And that will work much better because they will take it forever, not just for that punctuation for that point.
We've also got a question from Andrew. He alliances for Scrum Masters and product owners and even developers, but not testers. Why do you think this is?
That's another very good question. And yeah, Scrum Alliance is a bit kind of strange. And I'm surprised that they haven't done anything with the testers as other organizations have. Because quite frankly, at the end of the day, 2 days course is not going to help you much. You need to practice and practice. So you will have to ask somebody from the Scrum Alliance. I cannot answer that one.
We've also got a question from one of our other panelists, Chris. Chris, you're there. Do you want to ask the question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I was wondering, Amaia, if you had any problems with the buy-in to some of the softer skills and the psychological elements, particularly from hard-boiled technologists.
Ooh, yes. I have all sorts of problems, and certainly we have a lot of hardcore engineers that they don't buy into these things. I remember having a conversation with one of them once. It was what I was saying is about the definition of done, for example, and it's like, well, you can put whatever you want as the definition of done, but you need to track when that item gets to production. So, I never understood what the engineers sometimes, they just want to get rid of things and see them go. But it's the value that we bring to the customers that is what matters in this occasion. And he was just saying to me, well, this is just theory. You just live in some world that, comes from these books, but this doesn't happen in real life. I say, it does happen in real life. And people care about when they see these things into production. You might not. But you need to agree with me that, even if you have finished with it, you still need to tackle and make sure that that is being used by the end user. Because otherwise, what is the value of what we're doing?
Thank you.
Manuel, I think, did you have a question as well?
Yes, sure. I really like your talk. Thank you for the explanation. From my side, I'm actually one of those technologists, so I'm quite interested to understand if together with the mindset, you were supported by some tooling as well. So any tooling you think can help introducing an agile mindset?
I don't think there is any tooling as such. There are things that you can do. Basically, it's just reflection. A lot of meditation, quite frankly. Make sure that you actually are aware of yourself and how you come across to others. Make sure that you actually understand the other person and you put yourself on the other person's shoes. So they are not tools as kind of you can see in the computer or things like this. It is more like personal skill that you need to work and build.
Thank you.
And just one final question from the comment section. I think you may have to be a bit diplomatic here from this question, but how agile are the Babylon executives and how are their mindsets?
Very good question, Gregorio. And now you're putting me in a very tough situation here. I have to say we have all sorts. There are executives that they are absolutely brilliant. I can tell you that my boss is absolutely brilliant, but there are executives that they don't get this. And I have another occasion when I tried to give feedback to one of the big people up there, and I got completely shut down. So we're working on it. We get there, but there is a mix. Not everybody is the same, obviously, but slowly we are getting there. And I think the most important thing is that people is starting to see the benefit of this. Not that just about doing Agile, but about being Agile. And hopefully we will conquer.
Thank you very much for that. Really, really insightful. And it's as I say, our audience always appreciate a little bit of an insight into different companies. And I hope you guys have found value in that talk. So really excited now to introduce Chris, who's the engineering lead at Centrica. He's going to be talking about Spotify guild models.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. So can everybody see my slides? I take it, I hope everybody can see them. So a little bit about me. So I have a background in innovation and as an engineering lead, as Jonathan said. But in more recent years, I've become more of one of these, to use the word Amaia said, maybe an evangelist around the cloud, new ways of working and transformation. And for my sins, I'm the founder and coordinator of Centrica's Guild Network that's been running a few years, and I also blog. So a little bit about Centrica itself. Centrica is a very large organization, quite diverse, multinational, and we have lots of different business units. I won't go through all of them, but we've got everything from, a very traditional parts of the business that are to do with, maybe the utility side of it, all the way to things like demand response services that are to do with, effectively helping electricity grid out by actually creating virtual power plants, by allowing companies like industrial, corporations to turn their air conditioning off at certain times to lower the actual effect on the grid. We've also, been building the largest battery, in the UK, and we've also got various brands like Hive and Local Heroes that kind of work more in the kind of next generational space. So this gives us a number of challenges, and I've broken them down into 5. So the first thing that we've got, the influence of maybe the mothership, or what we might call mode 1, over some of our decentralized businesses and teams. So some of them might be similar to, the Babylon Health type of organization that Amaia described, where it's a new, business venture working in a completely new way and, wall-to-wall agile. But also there's kind of a team that's trying to reduce cost of ownership and things like that across the board, and is maybe looking at it from a different dilemma. So there's kind of those two dynamics, those two mindsets, if you will, don't always play well together. There's also, because of this, an unevenness in terms of our cultures and skill sets. And in fact, people have talked about the fact that in some cases we might be at both ends of a capability maturity model around cloud or agile or something like that. Part of it is we don't really have an alternative operating model for everybody. We've got people, or that's what we're working on. We have people that are operating in a more formalized way, and then we've got other people that are fully agile, and we need to work out how do we accommodate both parties. So we have issues with understanding what's the value proposition for people to actually work together when they have these different mindsets. And again, as Amaia mentioned, there can be trust issues, as they are in a lot of large organizations. So how have we tackled this problem? Well, basically, the way we decided to tackle it was to actually imagine we'd already transformed in a way, and how could we emerge from our wider organization in this sort of transformational manner? How could we, you know, be that butterfly emerging from the chrysalis? So we started organizing at the grassroots, and we formed a guild, and we didn't really ask permission. We just kind of cracked on with it. That's one of the things that's quite cool and exciting. So what is a guild? So basically, people may have heard of the Spotify model. There's a picture on the right. I see it maybe as a community of practice. It's largely run by the membership. It could be drawn from people from a number of silos. It's about forwarding the aims of that community. It's typically voluntary, and it can be facilitated rather than led. And it's maybe the emphasis on psychological safety. It's really, you know, we could say things like the Spotify guilds that Jonathan mentioned, but also, you know, British Medical Association is a type of guild. You can say it's even similar to a union in some respects, in as much as it gives a kind of a collective voice to a group of people, particularly at the grassroots. So how do we operate? Well, our guilds typically meet once a week. We've got teams, so we meet over Teams, but we've also got Teams chat. And we've got about 450 members, with about 10 to 20% of those active at any one time. So before guilds, maybe the way we're organized tended to be more formal, hierarchical and transactional. And that meant, you know, this is a cartoon, well-known Bonkers World cartoon about how different organizations really operated. And to some extent, we had some of the downsides and upsides of all of these organizations, where different parts of the organization didn't really see eye to eye. You've got people that maybe thought that they were the decision makers, but they didn't have accountability for the outcome, and other people that thought that didn't work for them, and other people that were more about risk taking, other people that were maybe more about trying to reduce risk and optimize things. So there's a wide variety, and actually Simon Wardley talks about this with his, you know, Accidental Empires view of you know, pioneers, settlers and town planners. And, you know, it's well known that those groups don't always get on. So after the guilds, we really managed to change this, and I'll explain how we did it. But basically, we managed to create, we created people talking to each other. They were flat, informal, collegiate, and even sociocratic. And this is, I don't know if anybody's come across holacracy or sociocracy, but really this was around the principle of consent and equivalence. The guilds were really about involving people at the grassroots in the decision-making process, rather than it being, you know, enforced from above. So really the simple idea is that we realized that jobs, pay grades and egos got in the way of the organization. So we left them at the door, and we really emphasized the mutuality of the membership and the group sense making over actually getting the work done. And in the short term, that meant we got less work done, but in the longer term, it meant we built trust. And building that trust meant that we were really using, you know, these idea of some of these soft skills around psychology, but even network science, you know, in terms of actually networking in a way where we're breaking the silos down, where we were actually able to transform more quickly. So in some ways, we were acting a little bit like a trim tab, which are these little bits on on a kind of a control surface on an airplane or a boat or something, that just helps it it makes it easier to actually make a change by making a kind of a little change that keeps the change in place. So it's really like the guilds. We could act as if the organization had already transformed, you know, and by transformation we might be talking about the agile, but also digital, even decentralization. So it's basically like growing an ideology, and it's very effective. And really, just to riff on that point, this is a slide from Meeting Magic about Frederic Laloux's Reinventing Organizations, which is quite famous, but a few years old now. It's talking about different types of organizations. And maybe if you could say that our host organization is achievement orange, we could say that what we're able to do within the guilds, as soon as people enter a guild space, we can actually act like an evolutionary teal or pluralistic green or an evolutionary teal organization. So it's really about saying that when we go to a guild, actually we're already transformed. We have a slightly different culture, and it's maybe a more transformational culture, and that can accelerate the wider transformation of the whole organization. So how did this come apart? Well, actually, just to kind of disclose a little bit myself, so I have bipolar. And that means I have, you know, manic depression. So funny enough, this was to some extent came out of my experience with group therapy. So I learned through group therapy that you could actually have like a group of people where it's all about psychological safety and kind of exploring people's perspectives. So I kind of had that in mind, that when I was actually working with these guilds. So it really started off in 2017, where there was like 3 of us got together and we said, well, things aren't really working as well as they could. How could we improve it? And we realized there was almost a battle in terms of the mindset between modernizers and traditionalists. So we took that through a number of iterations, including, you know, our first full guild, which is the Cloud Engineers Guild in 2018. We then tried to grow it and specialize a bit too quickly, and it fell apart. So we really reinvented it with our Cloud Acceleration Guild. And then in about this time last year, we reinvented ourselves as the Centrica Guild Network, where we tried to specialize, but actually became a bit more mainstream. And now we're a thriving part of the overall strategy. So the interesting thing about this is that it did require tenacity, because what we found is from that initial group of 3 of us to actually, you know, now we're really, you know, a force to be reckoned with in terms of helping the organization transform. It took a number of iterations, and there were ebbs and flows along the way. And it's a little bit like effectively the scaling up of the, you know, actually forming, validating, growing, scaling up a startup. In as much as maybe in the early stages, there's some good idea, but we need some additional funds and investment to kind of keep it going until it's at a point that it can actually establish itself. So with that regard, you know, forming guilds and running them is a bit like there's a mixture of organic and inorganic growth. So inorganic growth is basically, you know, the founders, people like myself, putting in the hours to keep it going. You know, so in the early stages, for example, it worked really well, and then when we tried to grow it, we grew it too quickly. We'd have some guild calls where nobody would turn up, and I would feel like a failure. And other ones where there'd be 30 people, and it was like, hooray! And it was basically actually dealing with those troughs took the inorganic elements, but when they were removed, what we ended up with is organic growth. And now people are forming guilds without me even knowing about it, even as the founder. So it's basically bedded in to the extent, rather like when we launch an IPO for a company, that's actually now the guild mindset and movement is self-sustaining. Here's some of our guilds. We've got around a dozen actually. So, but we've grown out of IT. So we've started we have a culture guild that's been running almost a year called Culture Corner, where we talk about all sorts of elements around culture, psychological safety, trust, different forms of leadership like mode 2 leadership, servant leadership, what that might mean, even neurodiversity and obviously diversity and inclusion more generally. One of our most knockabout guilds is DevOps and mode 2, and there's lots of very robust debate about how we accelerate DevOps. We've got a guild that's only a few weeks old around employee development, where we're looking at actually taking employee development and partnering with HR We've got a guild around Scrum Masters. We're talking about guilds for product owners at the moment that are going to be launched. We've got a guild around, the ServiceNow platform and a number of other topics. So what we're really able to do is to just like form these relatively spontaneously with a group of interested people to try and forward the aims. So what are some of the highlights and lowlights? Well, lowlights is actually getting a whole movement, almost a transformational movement off the ground, can be a lot of work. And I have had stages where I personally have burnt out and I've said, look, I need a break from this. I've chaired, facilitated hundreds of these sessions now over the last couple of years or so. And sometimes, there was, if I've done like 5 or 6 a week and they're all quite lively and everything, it's like, yeah, I need a break. Controlling strong voices is often a challenge. Sometimes we have people that have a lot of good things to say, but they can dominate, and how we kind of keep their enthusiasm but try and temper it so everybody else gets a chance, can be a real challenge. There are also sometimes challenges with rejection, as I said, when I've been on calls and nobody's turned up or it's not really working. And, you're always going to find that when you create something new, that it won't work always in the short term. You have to measure success maybe in the longer term. Very occasionally we get a problem with toxicity, but it's very, very rare. But very occasionally we'll get, because it's more of a loose structure, some people will take advantage, but that doesn't really happen very much. And if we look at the highlights, they're far larger. We've got outside speakers in. We've actually introduced into the lexicon of the organization terms like psychological safety and unconscious bias and hidden narratives, things that were out there. We've really dealt with, addressing elephants in the room. We've been able to crowdsource. I work sometimes, my day job sometimes is as an enterprise architect. I now get to, crowdsource a lot of my work, and the stuff I do, it gets adopted because actually it wasn't mine. It was something I crowdsourced from the guild. So we're able to use it as a real vehicle for change and for networking. And we're growing our influence. We're actually now quite a powerful force in the organization, almost a quasi-organization within an organization. And we have official sponsorship. And indeed, while we started at grassroots, we've gone all the way up to the C-suite now, is involved in the guild. And one of my favorite moments, in terms of dealing with elephants in the room, we were able to, for example, deal with one of our C-suites about the fact that they had, and excuse my language, resting bitch face, and they were concerned that people weren't talking to them more. And we were able to kind of say within a guild, we were able to say, well, look, it's actually maybe you're giving off the wrong vibe. So it was able, and that was, that's pretty surprising. But the interesting thing, it was that because once we're in the guild space, it's basically, well, as I said, job titles and things, it's kind of, they don't apply anymore. We're people together. It's almost like a support group. And that equalizing force means people it brings the best out of people, I find. So really the advantages of guilds are that we can create them at will. We can delete them at will. We can mess around with them. We don't have to talk to anybody. There doesn't need to be an org chart change. There's no permission or budget. We borrow a little bit of each people's time. Maybe it's coming off a CapEx or an OpEx, but it's basically we're just borrowing a little bit of people's time to volunteers. It's hugely empowering. Once people are in the guilds, it almost creates a movement. People are able to swarm. It really does build those relationships, and it reduces the barriers to collaboration. We can even do some things like Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where we can actually break down why people aren't getting on well or why they think they were hard done by. So we can also catch things that the formal organization is missing, because we have that bandwidth at the practitioner level at the grassroots. And we've got basically a slot every week where we can work on making the organization better. So we're not really constrained by the status quo. We can actually accelerate the transformation of the organization within this construct. So really, if you like, we're an agility startup. It's about agile mindset, but really expressed through an organizational construct. And that's really our story.
Thank you very much, Chris. Really, really interesting there to hear about how the guilds have been set up and established. So we have a question from Pradeep. He says, so are these guilds similar to communities of practice?
Yeah, absolutely they are. They're fairly broad. So it's really, because they're run by the membership, Pradeep, it depends on what the membership brings. So some of them will be very much that they have a particular objective in mind. So we had one about community practice around Scrum Masters, for example, where they'll look at equalizing how best practice throughout that particular team. How can they raise standards? How can they learn from each other? That sort of thing. Other guilds are a bit more speculative, where we're just trying to make sense of things. So, for example, our DevOps and Mode 2 guild, we're getting towards being a community of practice, but in the early stages, maybe a year ago, it was all about just trying to get people on the same page. So what we found is actually getting to the community of practice stage, maybe it needed to pass through that initial phase.
And yeah, we're bringing in the other speakers. I know, Shay, you had a question for Chris in the comments.
Hi, Chris. Great presentation. Just a question around Centrica. So I just wanted to understand how truly agile are Centrica, because obviously you've got lots of programs that are happening. You're going to have a multitude of suppliers. So in this autonomous approach for scaling agile, how agile are Centrica and their suppliers?
I would say extremely and not at all, depending on where you look. So we have that it goes back to the as I said, the 5 challenges we face. It's extremely uneven. So that's one of the challenges, is we've got people that are literally public speakers when it comes to agile and DevOps and cloud and things like that. We've had people talk about talk at reInvent. A lot of the stuff we do is really at the forefront, all the way to people who don't know what cloud is, and so therefore the issue is the unevenness, and also things like how we scale agile and how we bring more of the how we get greater levels of autonomy. And we're in that's obviously work in progress, is actually to make the organizational structure match the if you like, Shay, I just need to turn off my right, okay, for some reason won't turn off. Dismiss. Okay, sorry about that. So I think it's to do with our ability to accelerate agility now is not that we don't know how to do it. It's that the organization needs to fit the vision. We've got enough people with the mindset. We've actually cracked some things. So, for example, the stuff we're doing with the guilds, actually, we're probably ahead of the market for like traditional corporates trying to modernize. There's plenty of people that haven't succeeded in the way that we have. But in terms of our legacy, as any large organization will tell you, it's maybe a bit harder than if we were just a startup running in Shoreditch. And again, one could argue, do you need guilds if you were a startup? It's maybe the sweet spot is really about probably about scale and the scale of the challenge.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Amaia, do you have a question to ask? You're on mute, by the way.
I'm back. Sorry about that. Thank you, Chris, for your presentation. I was saying it was beautiful. And also, congratulations on getting the guilds created without your knowledge. That is a sign of success, as I think Sharon commented as well on the channel. But do you have any tips? Can you share any tips on how you got people engaged initially and how you go through those stages in which you are on your own in the guild, nobody has turned up, to the point that now they create on their own?
Absolutely, Amaia. So it's really, really easy. You join people who are unhappy together. You put unhappy customers in front of underperforming suppliers, and it just happens. So you need the elephants in the room. So if you've got people that are saying, I want to modernize in the cloud, but effectively the governance police won't let me. you put the two people in the room and you say, now no longer are you the governance police or the people wanting to innovate, you're just peers in a room. Now let's see if we can sort it out. And it's really powered by, so that's the beautiful thing about it, because the more broken things are, the more there is to disagree and talk about. So the more energy you have. So it's a bit like a martial art in a way, and I blog about this and I've talked about it. It's a bit like a martial art because it's like judo. The more momentum there is around people, it's not really working. The more energy we have to fire solving it, but it needs the context of the guilds, which is about, it's different here. It's psychological safety. It's not about me telling you what to do or you telling me what to do, or that's my job or your job. It's let's just talk it through as peers. And that's the beautiful thing about it, is that the more broken you are, the better it will work.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question as well to Chris? Quick one. Chris, yeah, fantastic presentation. I really enjoyed it. What's an application of guilds, let's say, in daily activities in the organization? You spoke about it. You touched around strategy, but what type of involvement have guilds on a day-to-day running of the business?
Yeah, so it's a great question. You know, so for example, Manuel, we've got a Mode 2 and DevOps guild, and specifically what we're talking about is the things day to day that's blocking people the most. So what we try and do is take things from the everyday, and this is what it's different from maybe more of a strategy-based approach. It's very practitioner-based. So what we'll have is people will bring their problems of the day in, and you know, for example, I've just come off a session earlier, which is our Mode 2 DevOps guild, where we were talking about levels of autonomy and how can people, what are the what are the guardrails, how much autonomy do people get on decision making? And we were basically working out, and there were different parties. Some thought a bit more, some thought a bit less, but it was clearly that the addressing that needed to happen in order to then for us to move forward. So we needed to get some agreement. So what we're doing is we're taking things that are hurting people right now, pulling those into the guild and saying, what can we do about it? Which is why, for example, in our Culture Corner, we've been talking a lot about Black Lives Matter and diversity and inclusion. Whereas like 6 months ago, before all the George Floyd stuff kicked off, we were talking more about type 2 leadership and empathy. So it's basically, what we do is we're influenced by the news cycle and what's topical, and that makes it relevant and engaging for people, but it also means people get something practical out of it, so it feels like it's, you know, in tune with the organization.
Thank you.
Cool. We just have one more question from the comments. So Maps Compass, do guilds have MOPs/KPIs, or have they been asked for?
Yes, or yes and no, I would say. So some people like a more formal approach. Some people like a more informal approach. So for example, guilds generally don't have agendas because actually we want it to be a bit scrappy. But what happens is the scrappiness can be quite helpful. The disorganization can be quite helpful when people aren't on the same page. But once we get some consensus, then we need to say, okay, well, we broadly know where everybody sits. What are we going to do about it? And it's that point that we need, you know, the terms of reference, articles of association, mission statements, objectives, you know, KPIs. Even, you know, we've even had some guilds have had their own manifesto. We've even had some guilds have had their own Kanban boards and stuff. But what we found is it needs to actually be based around the actual needs. So the closer we are to actually actioning things, we can introduce the formality. But if everybody's, you know, if everything's on fire and nobody can disagree, then actually sometimes the last thing you need is an action or a structured approach. Sometimes you need to just let it work itself out to try and, you know, provoke an empathy response from people. So people, you know, so that's the thing. It probably depends on how near or far apart people are, how close they are to actually action. But that's always the trend, is to introduce the structure.
Thank you very much, Chris. Really interesting to see what you've been up to at Centrica, and some really good discussion points from our panelists and of course the people watching. So no, thank you very much for that. Our final talk is from Manuel, who's at Bruhati Solutions, and he's going to be talking about what we really need to adopt an Agile Architecture Mindset. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and good evening to everyone. I'm here with Shay Mistry, another director of Bruhati, and I'm going to talk about, very briefly, an introduction of who we are, what we do. Then we're going to see what are the benefit of an agile architecture practice, so if we have to introduce into an architecture team, and agile impacts of 2D architecture and design practice. So for a practice that has never seen it before, what's changing really? What kind of deliverables do we need to introduce, and what's their impact? Have you implemented a design framework? We're just going to talk about design frameworks very quickly and see how they can support also the introduction of an agile mindset and also large-scale transformations using agile. And then lessons learned, and then a quick demo, just to cheer you up because it's quite late. So we're going to start with an introduction of Bruhati. We're an organization that is delivering professional services for large organizations across the country and the world. The latest big agile transformation we have done, so we're digital transformation experts, was a 2.2, where we replace all their IT systems, and we use the scaled agile approach based on the SAFE framework. We're currently supporting NHS on high-profile programs, COVID-related, and British Red Cross. We offer products in strategy and architecture, agile and delivery, business transformation, and cloud services. Let's start with a question now. If you don't mind helping me out here, if someone is writing down the answers, just play them out to me. I can't see the screen. So what are the benefits of introducing an agile architecture and design practice? So for the one of you that are in the delivery team, and what do you think is a benefit of being agile? Any answer? Okay, I'll go on then. Well, I think we need to talk about objectives, way to achieve our objectives, and then what are the outcomes of being able to have an agile architecture team. On the left, you can see that in order to achieve an agile architecture practice, we spoke about the mindset, but then in practice, also, you have to look into having architecture assurance frameworks that support that introduction and the governance around it. You need to make sure that the artifacts that are delivered are also supporting an agile methodology, and making sure that you learn and get confident with the concept of emergent architecture. We're not going to talk about it. You probably know that already. It's a safe terminology. What kind of outcomes can you have? Well, if you do it correctly and you use the right frameworks and tools, you have a repository of knowledge that you're going to build up. You can be able to control costs better, have more governance, increase the return on investment, improve your end-to-end traceability, have visibility around the organization, because as the other panelists were saying today, it's about being part of a team and being seen there and being able to deliver more impact as well in the organization. So there's a lot of benefits. Now let's see if someone wants to join on other questions. The second question we have here is, what are the agile impacts to the architecture and design team? So if we are introducing agile, we've never seen it before. For the one of you which are in the architecture team or design or anyway delivery. Okay, so the answer is, unless feel free to interrupt me if you want to jump in. We need more governance. An agile architecture team has to be able to govern the continuously changing and fast-paced environment that they are in, especially in a large agile transformation when you have over 600 people involved only in the core team, and you have up to 20 squads. unless you introduce governance, you won't be able to support effectively the organization. Parallel work, you know that it's an element that is seen very much. It's not only about iteration, it's also about multiple iteration running in parallel. And in the architecture and design team, we are originally used to see enterprise architects doing their roadmaps, solution architects doing their release architectures, and system architects then looking at the system design. This can be compressed, this can be seen in parallel. Multiple options are open, as we're going to see. We need much more synergy between the teams. Roadmaps, they are, yes, strategic, but in the end, as Safe calls them, we have architecture runways. So we are going to see how can we achieve the maximum benefit in the very shortest term. Emergent architecture, that's really important. Usually, organizations that haven't seen large agile transformation, they're not used to the continuous impact to the architecture that a large agile program has. And controlling the changes to the architecture is something that requires some skill and a specific framework. We're going to see that in a minute. Working a lot with planning, so architecture and design teams working very closely to program and project management is even more important now. Some organizations think the architects should be in the ivory tower, but that's wrong. Also for a waterfall approach or any other approach, but mostly in Agile, there should be a very good cohesion between teams. Focusing on near-term features, making sure that the systems as well and the technologies we're using are able to support continuous delivery, like we spoke about cloud technologies, we spoke about serverless, we spoke about containerized technologies. And variability. Things can be open until very close to delivery, because as you know, the definition of the scope tends to be closed, quite close to the release delivery date. So we need to make sure that we are ready to address different options, also depending on the amount of dependencies we're working with. So another question, do you need architecture deliverables in Agile transformation? This is about, okay, we are introducing Agile, so we don't need documentation anymore, right? Well, no. And this is an example of, before we get to the documentation and see a bit about what we have done and how we managed to introduce an Agile mindset for a very large transformation. This is an example of a team, and we spoke about guilds, so it's quite exciting that we're seeing yet another type of organization. So this is what we used in the past for a very, very large delivery. I was saying before, we had 21 squads in parallel. Squads are taking a set of scope and they're delivering it from epic definition to all the user stories and refinement and then delivery of those. So they have that responsibility. But how do we make sure that all of these work together and they are working on the same direction or against each other? And we also reduce duplication and we unlock issues. There are always issues. So we need a level of control on top. And what we've seen here was introducing a business squad team, which is looking after unlocking all the business issues and supporting from a business perspective, and a technical one, which is doing the same from a technical perspective. And then because we have to control the emerging architecture, we need another layer there, the architecture and design board, which is helping to bridge the delivery work with the strategic view of what we want to achieve. Then in terms of proper deliverables, in very large transformations, you can't get away without a blueprint. And this is something that can be created using different means, depends on also the tool set you have. But it's really important for these documents also to be delivered on time and to be iterated as much as possible, because the earlier they're visible to the whole ecosystem, the better it is for the program, reducing risk and increasing chance of success. Domain HLDs are used when you have very large transformation and you want to break up your scope in different domains. You still need to make sure that you have low-level designs, and design and deliverable assurance is also important there. Let's remember that Agile mindset, it doesn't mean that the whole organization is agile. And when you have suppliers, many times they want to stick to their way of delivering. And having this documentation helps to control. Sorry for the scary slide. I'll try to break it down for you and make it a bit more easier. Here, there are just a couple of concepts we really want to get through. So the first one is, as you can see on top, we have a couple of colors. We have a green and a red one. And they are highlighting the difference between a fully connected and a disconnected organization. We're going to talk about it in a second. Secondly, we're trying to explain what artifacts we need to deliver in large agile transformations. And on top, you can see what we call in Bruhati the digital transformation value chain. The digital transformation value chain is nothing but a set of phases that every large transformation has to follow. And there is a level of iteration. It can be an iteration that you will see at release level, and also within delivery, you have your sprints. But in terms of deliverables, you start as we're still talking about architecture and design here. You start with architecture vision and strategy. We need to define roadmaps and release architectures. We need an enterprise architecture repository of reference. That's why I was talking about having a repository before. Without that, it's really easy to lose control. You have 21 squad working on it, so you have to have the right tools. You need to be able to, when you're in delivery, validate processes, data entities, application impacts, interfaces, making sure that if you're running multiple stacks, those are quite clear. What kind of strategy are we having? How do we migrate? These are challenges that you will see also in a classic, as an example, waterfall delivery. But the big important point here is having a reference architecture and design framework. Without a reference architecture and design framework, it's really difficult to control a large transformation using Agile, also using waterfall. Ready for scale and service performance are also other activities that need to be looked at from architecture into service. Now, let's make it a bit more complicated. No, a bit easier, hopefully. What frameworks have you implemented? So, I mean, I'm really interested to understand, and maybe you can write it down the questions, we'll talk about it later. Have you ever seen a framework? Do you know what it is? And what's your opinion on that? In Bruhati, we have some assurance frameworks that we defined. These are based on best practice and the experience we had delivering large transformations. And we can see that there are two, ADAF and ADDF here, where ADAF looks at assurance of architecture and design across the whole transformation, from strategy to portfolio to delivery and service. And ADDF instead is looking into, when I'm delivering, how can I deliver across business, delivery and solution layer in the most effective way? How can we make them work? And now that everything is remote, this is even more important. Teams don't see each other. So how can we create that cohesion? We need process, we need frameworks, we need templates and tools. And that's how we managed to get control over this large agile transformation. So just to wrap this up, in order to develop an agile mindset, we think you need to make sure that you address resistance to change. And we saw that in the other talk as well. Resistance to change of agile adoption, it's a big showstopper. So we need buy-in of the executive team and making sure that they are pushing to address these as a matter of priority. Alignment of teams, making sure that we involve every team into the conversations. Stakeholder management. If you have a large agile transformation with 500 stakeholders and a lot of them are decision makers, how can you make them all happy? You can't. So it's all about making sure that the expectations are set before even delivering anything. And that makes it a bit easier. Products versus project. You know very well that when you're an agile organization, you should start thinking about products. So that's what you're delivering. It's not a project anymore. Workflow, frameworks and tools. We spoke a lot about that, and to me, it's quite an important point. We believe that unless large organizations are ready with frameworks and tools and processes in place, it will be very, very difficult. I call it the 6-month rule, actually. I think that organizations sometimes embark in these transformations and they think, yeah, I will do that. But then they take about 6 months to get up and running at full speed. This is something that can be compressed when you have the right approach. Keeping everything as much out of the box as possible, that always works. And making sure you empower your team. Again, we spoke about the power of guilds and how powerful they are because they bring everyone at the same level. Exactly the point. If you make sure that your teams can own their decision, for sure, they are much more successful. Now, I'm going to show you a little demo, just a few minutes, of an example of how we actually implemented an end-to-end large agile transformation using frameworks and tools. And it's also a different voice, so maybe it's a bit better. There's a lot of music. And we used the Gartner quadrant best products in the enterprise architecture and in delivery space. We partnered with Software AG and Business Design. And I think it's quite exciting to see them working. There's actually a little demo. So if you don't mind, I'll just launch the video. Hopefully we're ready to go.
Welcome to the demonstration session of the Bruhati Architecture Design and Delivery Framework for Agile Digital Transformation. Ben represents some of the core stakeholders involved in a digital transformation journey. The digital transformation value chain starts with strategy definition, then portfolio of changes planned. Change initiatives are organized in releases that are delivered and then moved to go-live service. Delivery, business and solution stakeholders are involved throughout the full transformation value chain and use the Bruhati Architecture Design and Delivery Framework and tools to seamlessly collaborate and drive the end-to-end process. Business executives start the value chain transformation journey defining the organization's strategic themes. This is achieved through the use of the delivery layer toolset. In this example, it involves a Jira Kanban board. The next step in the transformation journey involves business executives and delivery leaders. They are planning change initiatives, assigning budget and program priorities. In this example, Jira is used to organize themes and epics in releases. When the release delivery work starts, business and delivery team are working on defining epics and user stories in the release. This is still done in Jira as part of the delivery layer, just before handing over to business layer for process analysis. The fourth step in the digital transformation value chain is to identify business process impacts. After strategic themes, release and epics are defined in Jira as part of the delivery layer, they are pushed to the process layer, in this case Biz Design, Horizon, platform where business architects and analysts are assessing process impacts. In the business layer, the business process hierarchy is refined and high-level processes are created. When those are completed, business layer is pushing the request to the solution architecture and design team to start with a solution impact assessment. Solutions impacts are now identified using Horizon. For each epic, application impacts are identified. In this example scenario, a release context diagram is automatically created using the list of impacted application in the release. After the diagram is adjusted as required, the solution architect decides to model a set of technical flows that describe how the solution behaves to meet the epics in scope. Application impacts are here represented with a sequence diagram. Other representations can also be used. Let's now look into a couple of scenarios where digital transformation stakeholders can leverage the Bruhati Architecture, Design and Delivery Framework reporting capabilities. Any stakeholder can access the business, delivery and solution dashboards to perform analysis and impact assessments. In this example, we are assessing the dependencies of the product selection strategic theme. The app navigation page is used to select the theme's landscape. This is a very easy way to perform an impact assessment. Custom dashboards can be easily configured to control all different aspects of business, delivery and solution of your digital transformation. You can, for example, measure your delivery velocity, control artifact status, generate dynamically release, and domain application, business, data, and technology architectures. Remember that the Bruhati framework is tool agnostic and can be tailored to your organization tool set and needs. Call Bruhati for free consultation. Bruhati, innovative digital transformation.
Okay, I'll move back to the presentation. So I'm ready for questions. If you want to see more information, you can go on our website anyway. The thing I wanted to say here is I believe it's quite important to see how during the delivery process, agile transformation can actually be achieved with the support of tools. And they can actually help getting the mindset if some organizations are ready for it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manuel. Really interesting talk. And I know from the conversation that our other panelists have got some questions that they'd like to put to you, and then we've got a few questions from the comments. So I suppose, Chris, would you like to go first in terms of your question?
Sure. Yeah. Great presentation, Manuel. I was just wondering, part of agility and, architecture and things like that, what we found is that it's often to do with continual improvement, being able to break the improvement down into smaller, effectively, basically pallet sizes in order to deliver. Have you got any thoughts about how architecture and architecture frameworks can, stimulate the ability to kind of break things down?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for the great question. Yes, we do believe that this is actually very much achievable. If the right framework is there, this can actually be helping to continuously measure and adapt the direction of the program. In fact, every big, large transformation at the moment works trying to define their product as a minimum viable product, and then instantly measure through the delivery life cycle. From my experience, having the ability to see where you're going, especially when you're driving this big transformation train, is what really makes the difference. And it helps also the architecture team taking the right decision at the right time. Because even within the architecture team, there are a lot of decisions. Sometimes people really like to push things in. But the thing that work can be measured, and then the right one can be performed.
I also think, Chris, the continuous feedback loop. So once you've pushed something out into live, you're always getting feedback in terms of maybe customer feedback. It may be improvement. It may be return on investment. So you're doing these additional tweaks that get put into your sprints or your backlog, and then you're going to feed that in and make sure that's developed in the next release. So I think that's quite critical, is that continuous feedback loop as part of the framework.
Thank you.
Amaia, I think you had a question as well?
Yeah, I do. You talk a lot. I think I understand your question now once I have seen your talk. You talk a lot about the structures, processes, and tools on your talk. But I wonder, how do you measure the engagement and the happiness of your teams? Does it matter at all?
It does matter a lot. And in fact, I think we said at the end on the lessons learned, we put people at the first and tools also as a support. But it's like a house. Unless you build the foundation, and then the wall, then you can build the roof. And you're absolutely right. You need a solid foundation, which I think is also a process and a culture. And this is the foundation. Together with both, then you can build your house.
Sure. I've got another question as well. When you have clients approaching you.
Just on that one, I think what's really critical, what we're finding in these big transformations are business and IT coming together. So it's really important that they're not working in silos. They're working in product teams or in scrums or squads, and they're working together as this unit and realizing what they can deliver together. So I think that of people coming together is really empowering, and in the world we're in now to deliver things, I think that's quite crucial, not working in silos.
Beautiful, thank you so much. And my other question was about when you have a client approaching you that they want this digital transformation, how do you first approach this?
That's a great question. I believe that it's all about maturity level, and there are many different factors that are influences successful transformation, independently if it's agile or not agile, or business-led or technical-led. First thing to do is making sure you understand the current ecosystem and how are they organized, what kind of processes, different type of maturity levels. That helps to get and define agile introduction assessment, and also a transformation assessment. Also try and understand their objectives, business objectives, strategy, and needs, because everyone is different. So there are some core principles on how to approach it, but then the outcome of it is always up to the customer and what the customer really wants out of it.
Okay, thank you.
Just on Manuel's point, I think just the key points is just understanding what the critical needs are. You know, before you bring technology into it, it's just what is the organization looking to achieve? What is the business benefit? And understanding that, I think, is so critical, because you can go into a path which is technology-led, and I just don't believe, I think you need to understand what are the business capabilities, what is the business looking to achieve, and then evolve your technology around that, you know, because putting the customer and is probably the most important thing, I would imagine, understanding the customer's needs, the end customer.
Good, thank you, Si.
And just finally, some questions from the comment section. So we've got Pradeep asks, do you think in large organizations there's too many technical design authorities that hinder the progress of delivery teams?
Well, great question. For sure, there is a big challenge trying to make everyone happy, and that always happens. I think it's about making sure you identify the people which are more pragmatic. If you have an agile approach, decision-making is everything. And making sure you build your squads correctly, or anyway, the teams that are going to work on it, and empower them to take the decision. If those are technical design authorities, or it can be a business authority, surely one of the big tendencies nowadays is to make sure that you always have a strong business representation that has a little bit of technical knowledge as well, leading those groups. That to me helps putting everything together. But in the end, it's about group effort.
And the final question, we've had a comment from, this process looks like safe. And it's like, what do you think, Manuel?
Yeah, so we're influenced. We quoted SAFe many times because SAFe is one big example that we are bringing today. Because I was explaining before that our latest biggest transformation was delivered using that type of approach. But we believe it's a very good framework. And personally, I believe that there are things that can make things easy when you approach a very complex challenge. And this is one of these. But together with it, you also need the right set of tools and principles and frameworks, processes, templates. It doesn't come out of the thin air. If things are not defined up front, you'll have to define them later. I can tell you it's been the good 6 months rule I was talking about. I've seen it happening many times in my career. I was part of the Accenture team as well. I've done many large transformations, and I always seen that happening over and over again. So sometimes a reference framework is not the full answer, but it's a great way of starting a transformation journey.
Thank you very much for that. And no, I'd like to thank all of our speakers who've spoken this evening on the topic of Agile Mindset, and we hope the audience who are watching this have found some benefit in it. And as I said at the beginning, these talks are all about adding value, and we hope that we've been able to do this. So again, a big thank you to all our speakers for giving up time to talk about what they're passionate about, and we hope to see you next time in our next Agile event, which will be advertised again soon. So from me, thank you very much, and from our speakers, thank you very much, everybody, and I hope you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.